When you're sitting down at the desk to write, there's this quality of making something out of nothing, creating this world out of your head. And as you start to build that and you're moving down the page and you're seeing this, maybe a scene, maybe an argument, whatever it is you're writing, it's an incredible feeling. I don't remember really a time when I didn't want to be a writer. Ever since I've been able to write in a notebook, I've been writing. And so when I was like in first or second or third grade, I would sit on the playground with a notebook and write these little chapter books about, orphan girls on adventures. And the thought that I could do something like that I could bring someone else into the world of a book just seemed incredible to me. I started out as a journalist, and it was actually during my time at Hedgebrook that I began to really step into my role as an author and more of a exploratory creative writer. I feel like among writers in Seattle, there was just a knowledge of this sort of, what often gets called writer's Narnia that was up here on Whidbey Island. And I remember going to my cottage and walking in. Famous thing about Hedgebrook, which is that they call it the one spoon cabin. So you walk in and there's one dish, one spoon, one cup. As someone who was mom and a working mom, to just see that everything was just for me and there was just enough for me, it's almost shocking when you first get here and you realize that everywhere you turn, your comfort and your needs have been anticipated. So it wasn't just being fed, it was, having food available for the next day. It wasn't just having shelter, it was having a wood stove and then having wood cut perfectly for the wood stove. As a Northwesterner, I think that was one of the things that was most thrilling to me. There's this really interesting geography of the interior of the cottage where maybe if you're writing all day, you can kind of move around the cottage from nook to nook. Even though it's a tiny space, you're sort of go over into the land of the window seat for a while and write there, or you maybe go upstairs and are in a different environment. But each of those spots has an almost hideaway feeling that almost makes you feel like a little kid. I was lying in bed looking out the incredible arched window that is original to the cabin and watching the wind move in the trees and this sort of quality that the trees are almost breathing. Stuff like that where you're just really slowing down and experiencing nature while you're in your cottage is just incredible. I was going into digressions, I was daydreaming. It was sort of a different process than I was used to as someone who had actually worked in a newsroom. And I remember I went down to dinner. There was a woman sitting across from me, Cherie Smith, who's a novelist. And I looked in her eyes across the table, and she just had these wild eyes. She had these eyes that just were sort of still in her book and not quite yet at dinner. And I realized, oh, this person's an artist. She's making something that's not cut and dried, and she's in it. And I recognized my own process in her eyes, where I suddenly had this moment of recognition of myself, not just as a journalist, but as somebody who was trying to make art. So I completed a draft of my first book at Hedgebrook in 2009. I finished the draft, which was an incredible feeling. Finishing any book is a lot. And then when I came in 2010 or 11, I found the seeds of my second book, Love and Trouble. I started writing its material about growing up in the 1970s. It's sort of unsettling material, as memoir can often be, and being at Hedgebrook, being in this incredibly nurturing environment, I was able to start writing about really difficult things. And I worked on my new book, Monsters, that came out this year. I wrote 2 of the most major and most important chapters while I was at Hedgebrook. Being given the time and the space to find that writing is something that I would love to see for every woman writer who comes here. The opportunity we have as readers to read their work that they make when they're here and then when they leave and they produce their books. What I want to see is sustainability, longevity, money to keep all the infrastructure up and running. I want to see money to make sure that writers can come for free to live on this land into perpetuity, one hopes. The commitment needs to be broader, deeper, And that's my hope, is to see it well supported.